Hello, and welcome to the SAF Audiovisual Cast, where we, SAF, connect and share information from top university officials, faculty, and administration directly with SAF students and parents. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, William, with SAF and IES in Chicago. We've got a special guest here today. He's a professor with IES Abroad. He has an BA, an MBA, a JD, and a master's in public administration, having studied at a variety of higher learning institutes, including Harvard, a professional whose time and career remains split between the business world and academia, Jay Moran. Greetings. Hello, Jay.
Hi, nice to be with you.
Wonderful, and thanks for being with us. Jay, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. I grew up in the United States. I'm from the middle part of the United States. That's where I went to school, and that's where I started my early career. I studied economics and went to graduate school for business and law. And then I was a management consultant and a corporate lawyer in the United States. I took a little time off and decided to transition, and eventually ended up in academia and in Barcelona, Spain, where I've been for about 12 years, teaching leadership and business classes for IES.
Very exciting. So what brought you to Spain?
You know, initially I was just thinking about transitioning away from being a corporate lawyer. And I took a trip over here, and I was just kind of thinking about possibly working in Europe. And I really fell in love with the place and liked the atmosphere of Spain and Barcelona in particular. And after I went back to graduate school again in Boston, decided to move back here and to reinitiate my career over in Barcelona.
Fantastic. Very cool. So today you're representing IES Abroad. SAF is a part of IES Abroad. Now, you typically teach IES students in Spain at the Barcelona Center. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
So tell us about your academic role with IES.
Well, I've been teaching here at IES for about 10 years, maybe a little bit longer. And I approached IES, and I was excited about a leadership course, the course that we're going to talk more about here in a minute. And they were excited about it, and so that course was approved. And then since then, I've taught other classes in business strategy and marketing and some other areas. But it's been about a 10-year relationship. I have taught at other universities as well, but my main focus is with IES.
What excites you about international education?
Well, you know, we're all becoming sort of globalists today. You know, people travel more than they did. People work for international organizations. We're coming into contact with people from different cultures all the time. We need to work with people internationally through our communities and our organizations. And so I think international education is just sort of a natural progression as a society as we become more global.
Very cool. Now today you're representing, and we're interested in finding out a little bit more about one of your courses, which is part of the Virtual World DiscoverIES program offered by IES. So just a quick recap, this is an online offering from IES Abroad. Courses are taught virtually, and a student can enroll in one or two courses for 3 to 6 credits. So students can choose from around 20 courses, and students are enrolled with classmates from universities across the US and China, potentially. So your course caught our eye as one potentially very interesting to our Chinese students. The course title is Leading Across Cultures, Principles and Practice. Very cool. Can you tell us about the course a little bit more?
Sure. We try to tackle 3 principal questions during the course. Number one, what is leadership? You know, a lot of people, we use the word a lot, but it's a concept about which a lot of us really don't really have a very firm grasp. So the first question is, what is leadership? What does it mean to exercise leadership? The second question is, why is leading across cultures especially difficult? Why is it particularly difficult to lead people who are from a culture different from your own? And there are some significant challenges to that. And then the third question or focus of the class is, how can people think about leadership in their own lives? You know, how can a student start to think about his or her own leadership development? What role he or she might like to play in the future? Is there an opportunity to lead that person might like to pursue? And that's sort of in a nutshell what the class is about.
A very cool course offering. So what type of student will benefit from this course?
Well, I think students who are curious about working in organizations, people who are curious in learning more about group dynamics, about some of the challenges, but also opportunities that arise when you work with other groups of people. People who perhaps are students who are thinking about, what direction their career might take, and what might be some obstacles that will come along the way, and opportunities, and how they can sort of begin to think about developing themselves to perhaps take a leadership role, or to maybe step back in certain instances and let others lead. And so I think that this class appeals to a variety of different students. We often get a lot of students that are interested in business, but also those who are interested in working in different types of organizations or having an active role in their communities.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, this could be something very relevant for international business students, business majors, something like that. But actually, it could be applicable to students across a variety of different studies. Is that right?
Absolutely. And in fact, the class is often co-offered as a class in international relations. So someone who might be interested in working in government, for example, or working for a non-government organization, I think would find the class very helpful.
So in the course description, there's a line that reads, "No course can teach an individual to become a leader, but it can teach one to think about the subject in a meaningful way." I thought this was quite interesting. Can you tell us how a student can expect to be challenged from your course?
Well, in a number of ways. First of all, just to become a better critical thinker. That's one of the key objectives of the class is can we start to think critically as individuals and try to understand different perspectives and different ideas that maybe are unfamiliar to us. And certainly whenever you're in a class that deals with people from other cultures, you're going to be presented with ideas that maybe are unfamiliar to you. And so that will be something that's integral to the class. Also, I think that the student will learn a lot about group dynamics. It may be some ideas about what happens when you get people in groups that isn't evident on the surface. So there are a lot of interesting topics that we cover that I think will be valuable to any student.
Certainly. Now, we have some questions about some of the practical, the nuts and bolts of the course. Can you tell us about how the course is taught?
Sure. Well, with the online format, we utilize a variety of tools. So I will record some video lectures that students are expected to watch. We will do online forums where we try to participate, virtually from wherever we are. We will have, of course, lots of different readings, eclectic readings. We will try to do sessions on when students can have a conversation with me and with other students to talk about the ideas that we are learning about. different types of videos that we can watch and then try to come back and talk about what we learned, what we observed, what was going on in that particular situation. So there are a lot of different types of tools. We have different types of games and activities that we try to utilize as well.
Certainly. Sounds like a lot of different ways to interact, and also maybe you've answered the question I'm about to ask, but in a little bit more detail, it would be interesting to hear from you how students could expect to interact with you, their professor.
Well, of course, we'd want to have sessions when we were all online at the same time. So we would have a virtual, meeting through Zoom or through some type of other online tool that would allow us to have a conversation virtually. Also, we would try to do forums that almost replicate an online situation where, as much as possible, we can interact and respond to each other in real time. Of course, I give a lot of feedback, so you're going to interact with me, coming back and maybe asking you to explore that idea a little bit more, or if you could, respond to the question in a little different way. And that will help us keep an ongoing dialogue.
Fantastic. Now, we had alluded to your background a little bit earlier in the session. I'd love to ask you a few more questions about some of your work in addition to lecturing with IES Abroad Barcelona. So you're also a widely published business writer, including having a book titled Why Are We Bad at Picking Good Leaders, which was selected by the Globe and Mail as one of the top 10 business books of 2011. You've also represented several Fortune 500 clients, both in consulting and at law firms. So it's a pretty extensive CV or resume. Can you tell us about being involved in both academia and the business world?
Well, I've had the good fortune to work with a lot of people in different fields, and I really feel privileged for that. I think that working in one setting, I hope, reinforces my work in another setting. Where I think that it's very useful for someone who is in academia to have practical experience, so I try to bring that to bear in the classroom and augment my classroom with a lot of insights that I gained in the business world. I think that each group, each setting kind of brings with it different context. Sometimes in the classroom, students don't have as much experience as they would have if you're working in a company, for example, or consulting with a company. On the other hand, sometimes people who are already in the workforce or have been in the workforce for many years aren't as open-minded or curious as students are. Maybe they're just so focused on a very narrow objective that it's hard for them to see and understand different ideas. So I think there are strengths that both students and people who are already in the workforce can bring.
Very interesting. Now, Jay, we talked about your resume a little bit moments ago. A lot of our students are also from top schools, and they also have really lofty goals as well, looking to reach similar heights of accomplishments as yourself. Do you have any advice for such students?
One of the ideas we talk about in the class, Leading Across Cultures, is how do you get to know yourself? I think it's an early goal that should have in life, which is to start thinking about what are their talents, what are their passions, how can they increase their emotional intelligence, how can they use self-reflection to try to pave the right path forward for them. So, my advice would be to, take time to do some self-reflection, get back from those around you about, how they perceive you. One of the things we do in our class is we offer students the opportunity to do some personality assessments and think about their own personality. We talk a lot about emotional intelligence, which is a very important concept for leadership and really just for professional life. So that would probably be my advice right now.
It sounds like advice relevant not just to students, but maybe to anyone.
I think so.
Now, in regards to our audience in China, we had some questions we wanted to send your way. In China, picking up a second language outside of English sometimes it's almost a question of what to do, where to go. Let's say looking at Spanish, French, or German, the options might be seen as almost the same. It would be very interesting to hear your opinion on why you started learning Spanish, why you find it useful, and then maybe comparison between studies within different European languages.
Well, I don't have experience learning any other languages besides English and Spanish. I decided to learn Spanish because I live here in Spain, and it's kind of a necessity to speak local language. Speaking English as my native language is an advantage because it is a language that's widely spoken around the world. I have taught a number of students from Asia, and I have traveled quite extensively in Asia, so I understand the language barrier, and I understand it as having had to learn a language here in Spain. But yeah, I think it's very worthwhile to try to learn another language, although it is difficult.
Very, very interesting. Now, something we like to do here to end on a little bit of a lighter note is one of my favorites. We like to talk about food a little bit. Normally, we'll talk about some Chinese food, but before we get there, because you're based in Spain, it would be great to hear about your favorite Spanish dish.
It would be hard to pick one. In Spain we have they have this thing called tapas, which are very small plates of food that you get, and oftentimes you will go with the group and order several of them. So you'll be sharing different small dishes. And in Spain, the cured ham is jamon is very popular. All kinds of fish, though, very the Spanish cuisine includes a lot of different types of fish and vegetables. They have a kind of a Spanish omelet here, which is a combination of eggs and potatoes, and sometimes they mix some vegetables in it, some onions. Very, very delicious.
I'm getting ready for lunch. Oof, this is difficult. Thank you. Now, anything else you'd like to share with us before we finish?
Well, I'd just like to say to any students that are thinking about this class or any other class with IES that I would encourage you to sign up. I've been doing this for a long time, and it's very rewarding for me to see what happens over the course of teaching a class. I lot, and the students do as well. So I would just encourage anyone to do so, and I hope that perhaps we can see each other in the future.
Jay, thanks so much for your time today.
All right, thank you.